Welcome to the Strong Life Coach podcast. We speak life, coach life, write life, and lead life. Today we're rejoined by our special guest, Chris Flores, the charming one, the uplifting one. Him and I have worked together in the past. We're here to talk today about transcendent friendships. Chris, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me back. Love this topic. Let's do it.
All right. So when we say the phrase transcendent friendships, what we're talking about is having friends or connections that transcend your situation and circumstance. So for us, we met as we worked together in the insurance industry, but just because both of us have transitioned from the insurance industry does not mean that our friendship has to change. And that because our friendship is transcendent, it can transcend where we happen to work, but we're still bonded and connected. So we want to be talking about friendship today. And if you're okay with it, we're going to jump into a little bit of true or false and have some dialogue on based on those true or false statements.
Sounds like fun. Let's do it.
Let's get it. So the first one I have for you is true or false, deep friendships are scary.
False. False. When I say false, because I think a deep friendship should be cultivated to close to a finished product. We should be beyond that scared stage. We should have trust. We should have invited that person into our circle to incorporate them into our lives at a greater speed. And I think that when we're first meeting people, learning who they are, incorporating them, there is fear. There's fear in insecurity. There's fear in letting them down. There's fear in just not being who is going to be accepted by them or others. And we crave that acceptance as people. But when we're deep into a friendship, we should hopefully be beyond that.
Absolutely. Now, what's fascinating, and you brought up that sometimes insecurities and fears can come in a friendship. In fact, even betrayal is real, and betrayal hurts. And sometimes people have had pain from other relationships, and then they can project it onto the current relationship and say, surely if I was betrayed by this other person, perhaps I'm going to be betrayed again by this current person. Now, and that can be a real hindrance in relationships. But to your point, I don't think the deep friendships have to be scary, but they certainly can be.
They can, yeah. Trying to play that contrary viewpoint of how could they be scary. When there's something greater at stake, whether it's dealing with a mutual issue, problem, could get more into detail, but if one of you falls, both of you fall, right? Mm-hmm. And you're gonna fall together. If there's a disagreement of some type, it's gonna be magnified too. So, for example, say that we disagree on something, which we never do, right? And say that it's a big deal. Say that it's like something that one of us is very passionate about. Sure. If you're just my next door neighbor and we disagree, it's not a big deal, right? So, it's my next door neighbor. I'm not going to worry about it. But being you, I crave your acceptance. I crave you being on the same page as me. Sure. And if you don't believe in something that I strongly believe in, or something isn't of value to you that I crave your, being on board, sure, then it's maybe going to hurt a little bit more. It's going to be a little bit harder of a fall compared to my neighbor not agreeing with me, which I'm not going to care so much about. No doubt. And
it's a fascinating element, I think, in friendships, because the closer people are to you, the more they can hurt you, the more they can disappoint you, and even the more they can annoy and frustrate you. And they have this greater potential for the pain the closer they are. For sure. All right. The second true or false statement I have for you is, I prefer a small amount of close friends.
True. I definitely do. And I think that's kind of like what you touched on a second ago, talking about people that let you down and kind of create a wall and a bubble around you. Kind of makes it hard to accept everybody that comes your way. So I think as we get older, a lot of us tend to be pickier and chooser with who we let into our life, especially when we have a spouse, we have children, we have these other important people in our lives that we want to protect and make sure that and for a sense they're not being corrupted or that they're not going down a path that we don't want them to go down. But especially ourselves, I find that it's easier to control your surroundings when you keep a smaller group of friends. The larger your group, the more that there's potential for chaos or potential for, just situations that might be uncomfortable.
Sure. And for me, I kind of thought through this question when I think about there's almost not on purpose, but there's almost this, maybe it is on purpose, the categories of friends where I almost have like my inmost circle.
Yeah.
And then maybe outside of that close knit, I have my inner circle, and then I have my circle, and then there's almost like everyone else. But there's an element of my close friends who know my ins and my outs, people that know the real me, like unconditional vulnerability, raw, the ugly. And what's satisfying about those connections and that inmost circle is that they know me best, and that they know me best as in they know the worst of me, but then they also accept me the most, which is a special thing. It's something I like the phrase that it's hard to fathom and understand unconditional acceptance when you don't have unconditional vulnerability.
I like that. Yeah, I find myself putting people in categories a lot, and I want to get more onto your kind of wavelength as far as just that circle and then branching out from there. But I find myself putting people in categories. Like, these are my sports nuts. These are the guys that maybe I'll go work out with. This is the group that plays video games.
Sure.
This is the group that likes to travel. This is the group that likes nature. Kind of spreading it out like that. And really, I think a lot of us don't want to mix those specialized groups together sometimes. Mm-hmm. But then sometimes we get lucky, and certain friends fall into multiple categories.
Right.
Which I think that kind of propels them into that closer circle, like you were talking about too.
No doubt. It's interesting. Like, even as we talk today about like transcendent friendships, they can transcend one category and bleed into another.
Right.
And I'm sure, and I actually, not I'm just sure, but I know we're going to talk a little bit today about the different ways that we've transcended different things that we've done in the name of the friendship and in the name of the bond. The third statement we have in the true or false category is, my friends are like me. True or false?
Ooh. Yeah, just this one is a tough one, because we get we got both sides probably with our friends, but I would say that that most of my friends are not like me, so false.
Okay, tell me more.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I find myself more times than not what I consider a healthy debate.
Sure. Sure.
And I feel like that's something that I commonly have with people in my life, and definitely, not argumentative, not somebody that loves conflict, mm-hmm. but I love that different perspective approach as far as seeing the world and life in a different way. Mm-hmm. So I think I'm drawn more towards those kind of people that don't share the same perspective as me, and I kind of crave that in conversation. I feed off that. I feel like it makes me a little wiser, a little bit more knowledgeable, seeing the world through different lenses.
Sure. I mean, right, you and I were in, a 2-hour debate this morning, right? And
yeah.
Going back and forth, sharing perspectives, sharing analogies, and really sometimes refuting the other analogy, saying that analogy doesn't seem to fit as well. And I could see that you vibe off of that. I think for me, I'm similar. I think I have a number of friends that are not like me. Something that I've been trying to do, my wife and I talk about this idea, we call ourselves the anomalies. Even among our friends, even it could be something as simple as kids. A lot of our peers in our age group, and my wife and I are 33, a lot of our peers in our age group are having kids, and we're that couple that doesn't foresee that happening or have a clear vision for that happening. But in that sense, we're the anomalies. We're not like a lot of the friends in our peer group, especially for us. We've been married 6 years, and people probably ask us once or twice a week about the topic, about kids, how we're thinking, what we're feeling, are we wanting them. But so I would say the number of my friends are like me in that I'm a communicator. I like talking. So naturally, I'm connected with communicators. I'm connected with people who like having conversation. And because I'm trying to make an impact for good and for a positive difference on the world, I'm often connected with people who are also striving to make a difference in the world. So, as the phrase says, there's that proverb that says the feathers of a feather flock together. There we go.
Yes. Yeah.
I was like, the feathers of a bird. Wait a minute. Okay, there we go.
Before you eat them. Yeah. Okay.
All right. So there's the true or false section. We'll jump now into the fill in the blank section. All right. Okay. So the first one is, the hardest part of building a deep friendship is.
Ooh, hardest part of building a deep friendship is, first thing that comes to mind is trust.
Trust. Let's talk about trust. Tell me about trust.
Tell you about trust. Trust is having ultimate dependency on this person to act in your best interest and to be able to speak on your behalf when you're not in the room, and for it to be positive.
That's right. Yeah, it's such a fragile, I think, idea because of how imperfect we can be, right? And we can be impatient. We can speak out of turn. We can let an idea or thought slip that maybe everybody didn't want shared. I know you and I are going to come back to that topic in a little bit, but
I've definitely been guilty.
There we go. But right, no, I think trust is a solid one as far as the hardest part, to choose to trust, even though perhaps even some evidence says, well, I should no longer trust because of the track record. But none of us has a perfect track record.
Right.
All of us fall short in that space. Great. So the next fill in the blank we have is when I know a friend is hurting,
When I know a friend is hurting, I show empathy.
Okay.
Show empathy.
What does empathy look like for you?
So to me, empathy shows showing commonality, showing that I've been there, done that, and not to say that I'm a specialist in it or that just you should listen to me, but showing that commonality, trying to build comfort, and trying to hold their hand so that I can help get them through it with my assistance or help, essentially.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right. So something I talk about in a workshop I do on interpersonal communication is about the difference between empathy and sympathy, right? So sometimes if you like Googled, sympathy and empathy, almost sympathy gets the bad rap. Empathy is like the one that's kind of held up, and sympathy is almost like I feel sorry for you, and empathy is almost like I feel sorry with you. But what I like about the definition of sympathy is like if you break it down, the word like in the Greek, like the first part sim, that's like similar, same, synonymous, and then that last part pathy, that's like that pathos from the Greek word of feeling, and being same feeling is what is kind of held up as empathy and being in that same place, walking, putting yourself in their shoes. So I think that's a powerful thing to do when sometimes our nature is we want to give tips, we want to give advice, or even sometimes the men are criticized as wanting to try to fix the problem as opposed to just feeling and being with people in their pain or in their emotions.
Yeah, sometimes, some people are going to say that the perfect answer is listening, just like you're trying to point out. So yeah, I think that sometimes we make a mistake on the circumstance of do I act, do I try to fix, or do I kick back and listen and just be a support system? So
yes,
it's tough.
And even being married, I know my wife and I had this conversation about even coming home from work, and when I come home or when she comes home from work and she's telling me a story, like it's one thing to listen, it's another thing to have a short response, it's another thing to have a little bit of a more meaningful response, it's another thing to be curious and feel what they feel and identify the emotions that are expressed during the story and get curious and ask about, has it happened before? What was it like? What did you think? What did you feel?
Yep.
What are you thinking now that you've reflected on it for a little bit, and to really connect with people to help people to feel understood. So
that genuineness, for sure. Yeah.
All right. Number 3, we're filling the blank is it's easy to trust a friend who...
It's easy to trust a friend who, I would say a friend that it's easy to trust a friend that has done the same for you. That reciprocal nature of them putting trust and faith into you for a circumstance, and then you giving it back to them. I think that's the most transcendent.
Right, and there's something about that to me that speaks about consistency, right? When they're consistent in showing love to you, that even when they make mistakes, it's like, okay, well, I know, even though I may disagree with what they're saying, I know where it comes from. I know it comes from a good place. And if I know it comes from a good place, maybe I could give it some more stock in what they're having to say. And I know they're not deliberately saying something just to be difficult or to be hurtful, but to kind of grab that principle.
Yeah, and I think too, like when you become like that deep in friendship, trust is just automatic. Like, you don't have to even question it. I mean, when you're deep in friendship, it doesn't matter what the person does. If it's right or wrong, I'm gonna believe that they have positive intentions and that their angle is trustworthy. So I'm typically not gonna question it in that situation either.
Sure. All right. So we covered the true and false, covered the fill in the blanks, and now we're gonna jump into some of the hard times that could come with friendship. The Egyptian proverb says, "A friend's double joy, and halves grief."
Yeah.
What do you think about that proverb?
It's funny. I was talking to you before this about how it's like Swedish, it's Honduran, Egyptian. I guess the Egyptians came first, right? So, yeah, it makes sense if. So the first part, friends double joy, right? If one person has joy, the friend, it should be contagious, So joy should be doubled, right? And halves grief. Explain to us the halves grief part.
So when I think about the phrase, I think about it's one thing when I have joy by myself, but then when I have joy with a friend, it's just multiplied.
Right.
But when I think about the grief that I'm having by myself, when I have a friend who's with me in it, it's lessened, and that we're carrying it together. Because I know one of my favorite quotes on the topic, it goes, "Rejoice with those who rejoice and mourn with those who mourn." And it's a very simple concept, but the word to me that stands out is the word "with." So that mourning is meant to be done with others, or the way this Egyptian proverb says that grief can be lessened by friends, and they can make it easier to cope. And even how we were talking earlier about trust, and even the friendships that we can have with one another, it makes it easier to go through the hard times, knowing that I'm not alone, knowing that I don't have to be by myself. And in fact, if I have great friends around me, like we were saying earlier, like that empathy piece, when I have empathetic friends, they choose to go through it with me. And it's almost like when I'm going through grief, I'm carrying a mountain behind my back. But then when I have a friend with me, it's like they're getting underneath that mountain with me. And all of a sudden the weight is literally cut in half.
Well said. That's why it's halved. All right. Perfect. Yeah.
So we do want to tell them a story. Do you want to lead off with this story, or do you want to?
The story that comes to mind. So we have so back at work, we had a mutual colleague that just as we were hanging out, it was kind of a text that I got, blip on the radar. I really didn't know the person very well, but someone passed away. And they were at work. I mean, there's like 1,500 people that work in the same building. Can't know everyone. But very sad thing. So mentioned it as the text comes in to Derek. And I didn't realize Derek had a personal relationship and experiences with this person, unbeknownst to me. Mm-hmm. So bringing it up, the mood in the room changed immediately. Derek went deep into thought, was reflecting. And it was a tough moment. It was a sorrowful moment. It, made you think of a lot of different emotions that I would let you speak on those.
Sure.
But the whole point is that I immediately wanted to solve the problem. And, this wasn't a time for me to listen because it was silence. It was a time for me to take action. So what I did is, I know Derek is an amazing Christian, deep in his faith. And I wanted to remind him that we needed to pray. We needed to bring God into the picture. We needed to ask for, his hand, his assistance, his strength. And so in that moment, rather than sitting there in silence and awkwardness, we prayed. Mm-hmm. And in welcoming God into the picture, that solved the problem immediately. It kind of made some strong feelings come out, and how would you put it? I guess, I'll just say this. It brought control back to the room. And it changed the mood back to a positive. And we moved forward. But if I didn't identify that as a friend, I mean, what would I have done? Just sat there and let nothing happen. So, but what was your take? What were the feelings that you were going through in that moment?
A death is one of the strongest experiences that I think to go through in life, period. And as I've had close friends, I've had family members, of course, I talk about openly that, my dad passed when I was 17. And death has a way of moving me to assess how I'm using the time that I have.
Yeah.
And it just, in some ways, it rocks me, it shakes me, it moves me, and it makes me think about the conversations that I had with the person who passed away, the conversations I could have had with the person who passed away. And I mean, I literally went right into grief mode when you shared that with me. And I'm just thinking about laughing with, the coworker's name is AJ, laughing with him and talking with him and connecting with him. And did I do my part to be a great example? Did I do my part to build him up? And you just don't really know, right? That's how kind of death, a lot of times death happens, is you just couldn't really project that something. I mean, he was seemingly fine a couple of months ago, and all of a sudden we got the news that he passed. I was like, whoa, didn't see that. So then when I'm over here like in a daze, in this grief / reflection mode, and then you're offering to pray, I'm like, okay, let's do that. And I remember us praying, and then I remember like just crying like into prayer, and just tears flowing, and it is just wanting to make the most out of the time that I do have. And I don't want to take anything for granted. I don't want to take my time, my purpose, my passion. I don't take any of my gifts for granted. And when I look back on my life, whenever the time is, I want to know that I did everything I could to help the most amount of people possible, which it gives me a lot of vision for, the business that we're building, to write so people could read from all over the country and all over the world, to make videos, to make podcasts that people who I've never got the privilege to meet can still be influenced by the principles that we're digging into and talking about. But I really appreciated you initiating us getting a chance to pray. I remember afterward you were like, man, that was like the most real prayer. And then you came over and said, hey, you want a hug? And I don't know if I said it, but in my head I was thinking no. But but you came over, gave me a hug, and again, it was, to me, it was one of those special moments that you initiated the prayer. You initiated, hey, let me make sure I'm here for you. I got your back. And it was one of those.
Yeah, that's my thing. Hugs are powerful. Just just that comfort, that's nurturing right there to me. I guess that's one of my love languages, if anything. But yeah, I mean, when we're able to enrich somebody else's life, it's a very special thing. Just no matter what the circumstance is, and if we feel like we weren't given that opportunity, or we let that opportunity slip by without action being taken, I can see how that would be tough to handle. But reflecting back on it, I think it was, we found some common ground there as far as some good experiences that you had with him, and kind of not putting all that burden in your own hands with something else. We can't give ourselves all that burden. Yeah, but
you're right. Even we got news. What was it, this past weekend?
Yeah,
the past weekend that another coworker, Robert Young, that we worked with before, had passed, and I think my immediate response to you was, man, it makes me analyze my own life. And then your thing was, let me jump in and try to reassure, like, hey, like, don't be too hard on yourself. Like, don't have an unhealthy take on somebody else passing. And I kind of refuted. I kind of jumped back. I was like, no, I don't know if I'm being too hard on myself, but death has a way of jolting me and wanting to wake me up and to get on purpose and to live on purpose, to live with intentionality instead of just letting life happen, to really, seize the day and go after it.
Yeah. You got to find purpose in life, for sure. Yep.
Well, good. So that kind of captures this element of friendship during some of the hard times, and we could grieve about a whole lot: losses, breakups, different pains that come our way. And the next thing we want to jump into when it comes to transcendent friendships is hard talks. And there's a Canadian proverb that says, you can always tell a real friend when you've made a fool of yourself. He doesn't feel that you've done a permanent job. You want to respond on that one?
Yeah, just, we kind of touched on it earlier. I mean, as friends, we're going to make mistakes. We're going to annoy each other. We're going to, we're going to know those nuances of what sets us off, especially in debate, especially in times of frustration, stress. And yeah, just this one is I don't really understand this quote.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I can speak on it as well.
Yeah.
It hits me because I can make a mistake, but to my friend, that mistake doesn't define my entire life.
Yeah.
It's a like you said, it's a blip. It's a molehill. It's not a mountain. It's not all of me. It was something that took place.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be my permanent definition of who I am.
Like you're not going to be judged forever on that mistake, essentially.
Right. And the real friend even helps you to overcome the guilt and the shame and the embarrassment that often we could feel. You know, when you make a mistake, you can feel the shame, the guilt, and the embarrassment. Your friend just has to help you to navigate, and it goes, well, you know, they have this respect for you for a lot of the good that you've done outside of that one mistake, and they help remind you that and bring you back up.
Yeah, and I think that's important, not to hold things against each other and to you know, move on in life. I mean, if we're constantly holding on to things that you know, is putting our friends into a bucket of you know, just uncertainty of their friendship, then what are we doing? How are we even considering them a deep friend? You know, we have to forgive. We have to move on. We have to adjust and you know, look at things in a better light.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I know we have a story when it came to being at work together, and I remember you had a conversation with me, and you pulled me aside. And,
okay. Yeah.
And you told me that you noticed, even as your friend at work, that I was quick to throw you under the bus. If we were with a group of coworkers, I was quick to tease you or make fun of you or to make people laugh at you. And you expressed to me that you expect better, and you expect me to have your back and not be one of the guys that's throwing extra shade or throwing you under the bus. But you expected me to be somebody who was getting under that bus and picking you up.
Right. Yeah.
And,
yeah. We want advocates. We want advocates as friends, and in the workplace. So if someone's appearing to not be your advocate, that could be problematic. Going back to trust, going back to collaboration. You know, and in circumstances that when I pulled you aside, it was because, you know, a private conversation being put public. I mean, you know, and it impacting someone where they questioned their job stability. So that was something that impacting others, where conversations that may or may not be perfectly appropriate be behind closed doors. But then sometimes conversations get taken out of context and being in jest become real. And then other people seeing that, I mean, they can't interpret, was this a jest? Was this real? So being a leader and you know, being responsible for others and their development, definitely have to be careful about you know, how that communication is portrayed and what's known, unknown. It just becomes complicated, you know. So
do we want to flesh out that situation as far as share
explaining it?
Right. Because I'm not sure, but if I was on the other side, I might be
like,
confused. Like, hey, wait.
Give us more. What did he
do? What did Derek do to say that
try to do
somebody's job stability? Like, wait, what did he do?
All right, you know, I'll take this. So myself, right? We had these what do you call them? Performance reviews in front of like vice presidents and assistant vice presidents and all this stuff, right? And you know, we were you know, trying to incorporate some fun conversation, but real stats. And one of the things was that we were talking about how, you know, different teams, they form cliques and friendships, talking about engagement, talking about leading people, especially when it comes to your team of 20 people, how do you get everybody to be engaged? And one issue that I had to overcome was that I was having some groups form and they were cliques, and one of the cliques even called themselves the Mean Girls. So it was a funny thing that this group was calling themselves the Mean Girls. And, you know, not to say that it's, you know, appropriate, but I mean, it was funny. So use that. I didn't call out names or anything like that during the meeting, but it was used in jest and how we did some specific actions on the team to get on track and to separate these cliques and to work more as a team and eliminate the clique essentially, right? So it was just a win in discussion. and then privately talk to Derek about, who this mean girl group was, to ease his curiosity, right? As far as like, who are these mean girls, right? So then in a team meeting for myself, for a potluck, when I was, leading my team and talking about this and that, and we're getting food, Derek mentions the people's names in the group and how it was talked about in that performance review.
Right.
So immediately, the leader of the Mean Girls, the leader of the Mean Girls, I love you, by the way, was like, oh my gosh, you called me out in front of the associate vice president and the vice president. Is my job on the line? Am I getting fired like tomorrow? Like, what is going on? So she was super nervous, and I felt horrible. I had to pull her aside and say, hey, you know what? It was something funny. Your name wasn't called out. Derek knows about it on the side. He misspoke during the team meeting. It's awkward, but just laugh with me about it. And that person laughed with me about it. It was fine.
Right.
It was totally fine.
Right.
But at the same time, it's like, oh man, stepping over boundaries of what you tell your friend. How do you accept them resharing that, even if you're there in front of 20 other people? Mm-hmm. So how much of a conflict is that? Do you lose trust?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Right, and which is interesting. And one, I had to take ownership for when you brought it up to me of throwing you under the bus. But at the same time, like still here, my perspective was he shared about the Mean Girls to a group of people in the performance review. Right. So to me, I thought it was fair game when I went into another group of people, which is his personal team, and shared about the Mean Girls. And I thought the team knew who they were, and he knew and I knew who they were, but he didn't know, but they didn't know that it was going to be addressed in the performance review. So, but regardless, it was still it was, I think, a faux pas. It was a mistake, a shortcoming on my part, and along with a few other incidences. And you put me aside, and it hit me because there's a philosophy I try to live by, which it says let no unwholesome talk come out of your mouth except what is helpful for building others up, according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. So I'm trying to think of how can I build, how can I benefit, but you were directly telling me that the way I was coming across is I wasn't building up, I was doing the opposite. I was tearing down. Yeah,
it could have been that, plus a little bit of like, maybe you stole my joke too, in that sense, in that moment. So that could have been part of it.
I stole your joke?
You stole my joke, yeah, about the Mean Girls in front of my team.
Okay.
I got to tell the joke in front of the performance review. You got to tell the joke in the team meeting. I was probably just jealous, man, because I love it. Yeah. It's all good.
Love you too. Appreciate it. Yeah. All right. So then we have in transcendent friendships. There's you're being there for each other for hard times, but then there's also even having grace and patience and forgiveness for each other for their shortcomings. In this case, it was me having the shortcoming and you being patient with me. And then we get this next category, which is shared experiences. The African proverb says, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Now, what does that proverb mean to you?
Ooh, I love that. Yeah, I mean that's all about teamwork in that sense. So I mean, going alone, we're gonna be able to definitely get off to a faster start when we try something by ourselves. But that endurance principle of being able to withstand time, we're always gonna be able to go further with people helping you. So love that principle. And the teamwork element is it's universal for everything that we do in life. I mean, it seems like for all my experiences, I mean, I've always gotten farther when I work with a group or a team versus by myself. Mm-hmm. But what about you?
Sure. I think to that point, the way we can complement one another. And the truth is, I'm not good at very many things. There's like very few areas of life that I would say that I'm great or even excellent in. But because of that, I need to lean on other people who complement me and make up for my deficiencies and who build me up. So I like speaking, coaching. Of course, that's what the business is about. Writing, communicating. Those are my gifts, right? I talk about them all the time. Communication, positivity, focusing, achieving, and maximizing. Like those are my five. Those are my five strengths. But then I have other people that come into my life that help give me other perspective, like empathy. I would say, for me personally, empathy isn't natural, but so I try to work at it. Right. So, but then when people are around me that are more in tune from an empathetic perspective, and I don't often feel guilt, probably because I try not to do anything that makes me feel guilty. But that's not the way I typically operate. But people who are more in tune can give me some objective feedback on how I'm carrying myself. Because even when you told me, you sat me down for that conversation from the last point, it wasn't as though I felt guilty and I kept going. It was that I didn't pick up on anything.
I had no idea.
And then, but you telling me that helped me to see it. And then, all right, let me make some changes that come from it.
Yeah, I think it's definitely about leveraging strengths and diversity and inclusion of a group. So everybody's going to bring their different skill set, and that's why when it comes to your friends, coworkers, it's really good to do exercises like Strength Finder. Like what's another one? Finding strengths in others. I forgot the name of it, but there's a lot of different things like Max Briggs, I think, is one. What is it?
There's personality assessments. There's is it Briggs and Myers?
Briggs and Myers. That's what I was thinking.
Briggs and Myers. Mm-hmm.
But with that stuff, I mean, you can really understand who your coworkers are and how they can help you. And just like Derek said, the empathy piece missing. I mean, that's something that I would like to say that I could add, maybe. So hey,
I like it. I like it. So in that space, in this category of shared experiences, and sometimes it's fun when you have friends that like the same things, but sometimes you have friends that you're on different pages. You have different hobbies or different preferences. I know one experience we had a couple of years ago is you really wanted Vince Carter's autograph.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
And he's going to be a sure Hall of Famer, one of the best, most athletic NBA players of all time, probably the best dunker of all time. And
they call him half man, half amazing.
Half man, half amazing.
Half man, half amazing. So Vince Carter's his basketball player that I got to see when he was in college, when he played for North Carolina. They were here in San Antonio for the Final Four. So I was excited to not even just get his autograph, but I wanted to just meet this guy. Definitely just a childhood hero, if you will, right? But inviting Derek, I mean, Derek's not in the business of, I got to go meet this celebrity. He's not a celebrity hunter, stalker, whatever you want to call it, right? But I was like, man, I got to meet Vince Carter. Like, he's a basketball fan too. Like, get your butt up, let's go, right?
Right.
So he wasn't into overly like doing this or meeting the guy or asking for his autograph. Even potentially thinks there's a little bit of awkwardness there, right?
Sure. And to be truthful, you had asked me if I wanted to go to his hotel, and I was like, wait, what? Like, how does that, how does that work? What happens? Are we like in the lobby or what's going on? But also, I found myself, I don't know what it is about me. I usually have no problem talking to anyone at any point at any time, whether in public or in private. But when I'm around NBA players, I almost like forget the English language.
Yeah, well, truth be told, he was right. We show up because I got some kind of inside tip of where he was going to be, right? Should we throw the hotel's name out? Is that even important? He was at the Westin. But so the entire team was there. It was actually the Sacramento Kings. He's been playing for like 20 different teams now. But we show up and the guy, it's like Vince, and he does one of these and keeps walking, doesn't bat an eye at us. So didn't work out to expectation.
But came by.
There were other players, and so this situation was fun.
So you're Mr. Cool, casual, down to earth, regular.
I didn't say all that.
And so you go up to get the autograph. I take a picture of you, and then
I probably compliment him too, right?
Right, and I'm trying to say something nice to him, and I tell him, man, we really want you to come back to San Antonio.
Which I thought was really nice at the time. I was like, oh, that's a really nice thing to say. Yeah.
I don't know why I said those words, because when he walked away, I was like, hold on, I just lied. I just lied. I don't want, not that he's not a good player. He did a solid job this past year, but in that situation, learning. Again, like I've watched basketball my whole life. I'm a big fan, and just forgetting how to interact, and things just kind of popped out. And I said,
But subconsciously, would you mind him coming back?
I wouldn't mind him coming back.
Okay, he wouldn't mind it.
But that just speaks to this is not really my world. I don't really have many interactions with NBA players.
Celebrities in general, right? And that brings up the whole point of, when we do talk to somebody and just an acquaintance, somebody we're meeting for the first time, when we do compliment them, is it always genuine? Is it okay to banter with maybe something that's not 100% true, but you're trying to make the person feel better? Is that okay?
That is a deep philosophical conversation for another podcast, perhaps about morality.
Oh, okay. That's a good one.
Right or wrong.
Not friendship.
Integrity. But
good point.
And I remember us going to the game that day, and we were you had a stack of cards that we were trying to get autographs from the players. And then one of the players came by, and I gave him the card to autograph. He looked at the card, and he like shook his head, and he signed it. But I gave the wrong card to the wrong player.
Yeah.
And
yeah. He probably had nightmares from that.
Yeah.
It's just embarrassing. You know, someone thinking you're the wrong person, you giving them an autograph, and it's not even you, right?
This is real.
Poor guy. I think he got cut shortly after that.
So I sabotaged his career.
Yeah, no, you in a sense did.
Yeah, right. So
just send him a letter.
So the point of that is transcendent friendships is you have these shared experiences. Like we couldn't really know this is going to be a story we'll talk about 2 years from now, with trying to meet Vince Carter, lying to George Hill, and then getting the wrong autograph on the card. But now we have that experience. We have that connection. So that's a shared experiences. And the last point we'll cover today for transcendent friendships is helping one another. And there's a proverb, and I don't know if I wrote down the origin, but it says, when need comes, one knows one's friend. When need comes, one knows one's friend. What does that proverb mean to you?
What does it mean to me? And this was, what origin was this?
That's what I said.
You don't know. You don't know.
That's a great question.
Okay. What that means is that, you know, when you're in need, your friend better be there for you. So it just goes to show that a true friend is going to be there for you in your darkest hours, in your hours of need. I mean, is it safe to say that they wouldn't say no when you call out to them? Is it okay for a friend to say no?
I think it's okay for a friend to say no, but I mean, it kind of depends on the reson why.
So if I call you at 3 a.m. and say, "Hey, pick me up, take me to the airport," you're gonna say no?
Now, what if my wife was having a baby and in delivery? I'm gonna say no.
Is she having a baby?
No.
Oh, okay. Well,
see, I said no.
Yeah. Well, you know, so it's tough.
In general, if you can, then it makes sense for friends to be there for one another during that time of need.
Right. I feel you. Yeah. Yeah, the closest situation I can even think of is that a friend of mine gave me a call to go help him out because he ran out of gas across town. So I literally had to drive 45 minutes across town to pick him up, go to the gas station, get gas into this little can, and then take it back to his car. He was good to go. I drove home. So that, to me, that was like a 2.5 hour trip, essentially, that I had to partake. And thinking back on it, I'm like, man, this guy could have, you know, probably spent less money than I did to get an Uber to a gas station 2 minutes away, fill up his own can of gas, and then get back to his car, and I wouldn't have had to been inconvenienced.
Wow.
Yet at the same time,
tell us how you really feel.
but I'm doing a friendly thing, right? So it's all worth it. Yet was it worth asking? So when do you? So when are you even in need to the point where you ask the question of asking for help?
Different podcast on knowing and discerning a need versus a want.
Sign me up for that one. Yeah.
I know when we worked together, and I was charged with bringing the Toastmasters program to the organization.
Yep.
And it was cool to be able to call on you. I remember that some other Toastmasters representatives were coming to the building.
Yes.
And then I asked you, can you hop into this meeting with me? And you responded to me in my time of need.
Of course.
And you got into, I don't know if it was last second. I feel like I had it on your calendar.
Was it?
I might have had to remind you again.
Didn't check my calendar much, I guess. But no, I had to give an impromptu speech, which I did not know I was doing.
Right.
So that was impromptu.
Part of what Toastmasters is you give the table topics.
That's part of Toastmasters. Huh?
Right. But you know, we were in there, and then and these ladies were more mature ladies.
I wouldn't have said old, but you could be listening. I didn't say it. Mature, wise ladies.
So these more mature ladies came in and they were kind of giving me a hard time a little bit about they wanted more people to be there, which they didn't really communicate beforehand. So it was the visitors were really Chris and I, and then they were looking to have more of an audience to try to
we weren't enough. We thought it was a dry run, seeing how they do it, getting their knowledge and kind of being able to build on it for our own. But they wanted to basically run an actual Toastmasters event with a bunch of people there. So just miscommunications. Miscommunications.
Yes.
But it worked out.
So I appreciate you being there, and in being there in my time, I need to be able to provide that support system because they were giving me a hard time with you there. If you weren't there,
it turned out great, in my opinion. It was awesome.
Yeah, it was fine.
It was good.
It's fine.
Yeah.
All right.
But just like that, I had the exact same thing where I needed your help running a campus-wide event nationwide. It was a Halloween event where, we had like 1,200 people come through security, and I needed your help on just the organization and structure and this and that. And you actually spent the entire event shadowing me, helping me get stuff done. So that was, very integral for success. So I thank you too. So being there for each other, I went both ways. It was reciprocal.
That's right. That's right. I know you're big on reciprocation.
For sure. Yeah.
So, I think you were a great example in putting that event together. Something I describe is your servant leadership was on display, and I remember you weren't above helping to clean up and helping to pick the trash so that the campus wasn't in disarray at the end of the event.
Hey, and you're right there next to me cleaning up. So I thank you for getting dirty afterwards too.
Yes, sir. So as we talked today, we talked about transcendent friendships. We talked about what does it look like when you go through hard times? Or what does it look like when you have you have the relational currency to have hard talks and to overcome those? I had the beauty of having shared experiences and how those deepen and really they color your friendship, and then how you're able to be there for one another to help and support each other on different endeavors and initiatives that you have. But that's the podcast today on Transcendent Friendships. Thank you, Chris, for joining us. Any last words?
Wow. Last words. When's the next one?
Next one. Okay. If you want to come over tomorrow, we'll make another one happen, So, and I like the little video element too. So he has a nice little background for us over here. So, great. So this is the Strong Life Coach podcast. We speak life, coach life, write life, and lead life. And of course, you got me, the host, Derek, and you had Chris Flores joining us today. Thank you for tuning in, and until next time, have a great one.
Thank you.